There are no other options. Those 4 words. Spoken quietly. No anger in the voice. No dramatic pause for effect. Just a GM sitting behind a table, hands folded, eyes steady, and a decision already made before the cameras turned on. The Dodgers front office didn't hold a press conference to create headlines. They held it because the situation had gone too far to stay silent. 2 players. Permanently banned. Not suspended. Not fined. Not sent down to the minors for a reset. Gone. The kind of decision that doesn't get walked back. The kind of decision that tells every player in that locker room exactly where the line is, and what happens when someone crosses it. And at the center of it all was a name that made this story impossible to ignore. Shohei Ohtani. The Dodgers are preparing for their first game against the Tampa Bay Rays. The lineup has been announced. The pitching rotation is set. The organization is supposed to be locked in, focused, moving forward with the clarity of a team that knows exactly what it wants to accomplish this season. Instead, they woke up to a story that had nothing to do with baseball strategy. 2 young players who were supposed to be part of the Dodgers' future, walked into Shohei Ohtani's space. They touched his equipment. Not accidentally. Not carelessly. Deliberately. They destroyed it. And when Ohtani was present, they didn't stay quiet. Words were exchanged. Not the kind of competitive banter that gets laughed off in a locker room. The kind of words that don't disappear once the room clears. The kind that sit in the walls. When the Dodgers front office heard what had happened, the room went very still. There are moments in a season where the temperature of a team changes. Sometimes it happens on the field, a walk-off loss, an error in a critical inning, a blown save that nobody saw coming. Sometimes it happens off it. In a hallway. In a locker room. In a moment where somebody makes a decision that cannot be explained by youth or frustration or the pressures of professional baseball. This was one of those moments. The Dodgers GM didn't sleep on it. He didn't call a team meeting and talk about accountability in abstract terms. He didn't issue a statement that used the word addressed, without saying what that actually meant. He made a decision. Swift. Final. Irreversible. 2 players. Permanently banned. There are no other options, he said. And the room understood exactly what that meant. But before the front office story could even fully land, a second wave hit. 2 players are currently undergoing emergency surgery. The test results have been released. The details of what the medical staff found have now been made public, and the picture they paint is not a light one. These are not minor procedures. These are not precautionary measures taken out of an abundance of caution. Emergency surgery means something went wrong fast enough that waiting wasn't a choice. The Dodgers have not yet confirmed whether these medical situations are connected to the locker room incident. What they have confirmed is that the timing, the overlap between these 2 stories landing in the same news cycle, has created a weight inside the organization that is difficult to describe from the outside. A team that was supposed to be talking about their starting lineup against the Rays is now answering questions about banned players and operating rooms. Let's go back to the beginning. Because the starting lineup announcement, which should have been the story today, tells its own version of what the Dodgers are trying to do amid all of this noise. The first game against the Tampa Bay Rays is not a game the Dodgers are taking lightly. The Rays are not a team that can be dismissed. They build differently. They think differently. They find edges that other organizations miss entirely. Against a Dodgers team that is navigating internal turbulence right now, the Rays will be looking for exactly the kind of distraction that this week has already produced. The Dodgers GM knew that. Which is why the lineup announcement came out with a precision and a calmness that felt almost deliberate. This is who we are. This is how we're playing. Whatever happened in that locker room does not change what we're doing on that field. Shohei Ohtani's name is in that lineup. Of course it is. There is something that needs to be said about what it means to be Shohei Ohtani inside a professional baseball organization. Not the legend. Not the highlight reel. Not the record-breaking contracts and the magazine covers and the translator standing a few feet away for every public interaction. What it means on an ordinary Tuesday. What it means when the cameras are off and the stadium is empty and it's just a group of professional athletes sharing a space. Ohtani is not a typical teammate. He cannot be. The attention that surrounds him, the media weight, the marketing demands, the expectation that follows him from the parking lot to the dugout, is not something he asked for. It simply is. And inside a locker room, that kind of gravity can create tension in people who are still trying to establish themselves. Still trying to prove they belong. Still fighting for a role on a roster where one of the spots is occupied by someone who exists in a completely different category of baseball player. That tension, managed correctly, becomes fuel. It makes players better. It raises the standard of the room. Managed incorrectly, it becomes what happened this week. The two young players who destroyed Ohtani's equipment and directed insults at him were not nameless figures. They were part of the Dodgers system. They had futures that people inside the organization believed in. And in one decision, one moment where frustration or jealousy or something even harder to name took over, they ended it themselves. The Dodgers GM did not frame it as a difficult call during the press conference. He didn't say, "We explored all options," or "We had lengthy discussions at the organizational level." He said there were no other options. As if the path was always clear. As if the moment it happened, everyone in the front office already knew where it would end. That kind of certainty from a GM is rare. It is also a message. To every other player on the roster. To every player in the minor league system watching from a distance. To every agent and scout and competitor who follows the Dodgers closely enough to understand what this organization prioritizes. You can compete here. You can push. You can be frustrated. You can struggle. But there are things that will remove you immediately, and they have nothing to do with your batting average. Mark Prior's voice was quieter than usual when he spoke near the clubhouse after the announcement. He didn't offer analysis of what the two players had done. He didn't frame it as a lesson for the team. He spoke the way someone speaks when a situation is serious enough that adding words to it feels almost disrespectful to the weight of what actually happened. The team knows how to respond, he said simply. They've been through difficult moments before. He paused there. Not for effect. Because he was thinking about whether to say the next thing. And then he did. What I will say is that how a team responds to something like this tells you a lot more about who they are than how they respond to winning. The room stayed quiet for a moment after that. On the other side of the medical situation, the emergency surgeries, the test results, the Dodgers medical staff has been careful about what they release and how they frame it. The results, now public, confirm that both players required immediate intervention. The recovery timelines are not short. The road back to competitive baseball, for both of them, begins not on a field but in a hospital room. Whether the Dodgers had already been monitoring these situations before today, or whether the tests revealed something that caught the organization by surprise, is a question that has not been fully answered yet. What is clear is that two players who were part of the organizational picture at the start of this week are no longer part of it in the same way. The Dodgers are a thinner team today than they were 7 days ago. Not because of a trade. Not because of free agency. Because of decisions made and things discovered in the same narrow window of time. Dave Roberts sat in front of the press conference room with the specific stillness of a manager who has already processed the emotions and moved into the part where the work begins. He was asked directly, how does a team prepare for a game against the Rays when this much has happened in the past 48 hours? Roberts didn't rush his answer. He looked at the table for a moment. Then back up. Baseball doesn't stop, he said. The game tomorrow doesn't know what happened today. The Rays don't care what our week looked like. So we don't get to care about it either. We prepare. We compete. That's the only answer. Then a reporter asked him about Ohtani specifically. About how he appeared after everything that had unfolded around him. Robert's expression didn't change. But something behind his eyes did. Shohei came in today and worked, he said. That's all I'll say about that. He came in and worked. It was a short answer. But in its shortness was everything. Because anyone who understands what Ohtani came in to face, not just the Rays lineup, not just the pitching assignment, but the specific weight of having his space violated, his name dragged into a story he didn't create, would understand exactly what Roberts meant. He came in and worked. The Dodgers will play the Tampa Bay Rays. The lineup is set. Ohtani's name is in it. The organization has made its position clear on what is acceptable and what is not. The medical staff is managing two situations that nobody wanted to be managing this week. And somewhere inside all of that, inside the bans and the surgeries and the press conferences and the quiet that followed all of it, a team is trying to remember what it came here to do. The GM said there were no other options. He was right. Because when something reaches that level, the only option that remains is the one that protects what the organization stands for. Even when it's costly. Even when the players involved had futures worth believing in. Even when the timing couldn't be worse. There are no other options. And the Dodgers, walking into their first game against the Rays, are carrying every single word of that with them.